When Act Two of A Midsummer Night's Dream begins, we once again, it's already happened in Act One, Scene 2, are introduced to completely different characters we've never seen before. However, Shakespeare keeps working on weaving things together. When we meet Oberon and Titania, they're going to be discussing Theseus. They're going to be discussing Oberon's jealousy over how Titania likes Theseus. And soon enough, the four lovers are going to wander into the fairies' woods, so will the workmen, and everybody will kind of come together into a wild world of comedy and magic. First of all, though, we meet Puck. We meet a nameless fairy at the beginning of the act who basically just exists to introduce Puck by talking to him. We are in a completely different poetic world now also. Remember that in talking about Act 2, Scene 1, I said that the workmen were speaking prose, while Theseus and Hippolyta and the others were speaking heightened poetry. But now we're in the world of a different kind of poetry. You might have heard the words over hill, over dale. If not, they are quite familiar ones that Shakespeare introduced in this play. Here's what the fairy says at the very beginning of Act 2, Scene 1. Over hill, over dale, through bush, through briar, over park, over pale, through flood, through fire, I do wander everywhere, swifter than the moon's spear, and I serve the fairy queen to do her orbs upon the green. I think you can tell that this poetry is more rhythmical. It's certainly much more rhyming than most of the poetry in Act 1, Scene 1, or in Shakespeare's tragedies. To me, it's like the poetry of nursery rhymes. It's almost Mother Goose in its simple rhythms and its rhymes. While the fairies do not talk this way all the time, they, especially Puck, frequently do, so that Shakespeare is showing us that here we're in the world of children's rhymes, we're in the world of a simpler, light poetry. Sometimes that does enter into the speech of the lovers, as when Hermia and Lysander first mourn that they can't marry each other, there's some rhyming lines, and that happens a lot in the comedies. There's even a little bit of rhyme in the tragedies. But with the fairies, I like the way Shakespeare shows once again with the speech, as well as everything the audience will see, the costumes, the set, that we are in a completely different world here. As I said before, this is the dream world, ruled not by Theseus and Hippolyta, but by their, I like to think of them as their shadow doubles, Oberon and Titania, the fairy king and queen. In fact, a very interesting point is that Oberon and Titania never appear in the same scene as Theseus and Hippolyta. Sometimes when people enact A Midsummer Night's Dream, the actor and actress playing Theseus and Hippolyta play Oberon and Titania. I think that's a brilliant touch, and it suggests something which a few critics have suggested also, that the magical events of Act 2 through Act 4, where we never see Theseus and Hippolyta, are sort of a dream or fantasy of Theseus and Hippolyta, in which they enter the world of mythology and become a quarreling fairy king and queen instead of the duke and Amazon leader that they are in real life. The fairy king and queen in this scene, like the heroes of most of Shakespeare's great tragedies, are talked about before we actually see them. The first character of importance whom we meet is Puck, and as I mentioned, Puck, in the person of Robin Goodfellow, a name which Shakespeare did not invent, is a nymph or sprite who does all kinds of magic, makes trouble in small, harmless ways, that belongs to British mythology just as much as, say, leprechauns belong to Irish mythology, or elves to the mythology on which Tolkien based Lord of the Rings. The little bits of mischief that Puck describes himself doing in his second line, I am that merry wanderer of the night, etc., are the sort of things that the Puck that Shakespeare's English audience would have recognized always did. However, he also describes the situation that Oberon is angry with the queen because she has an Indian child, and line 23 says, she never had so sweet a changeling. Now that word is used again in this scene, and this word means a child that fairies had left when they'd taken away the real one. Shakespeare mixes it up a little. It's my understanding that the word changeling means the child that is left behind once the fairies have stolen away somebody's child. Another piece of rather less harmless mischief that is attributed to fairies. But the Indian boy that Oberon has taken is the one that he and Titania quarrel over. A little weakness in the plot. We never actually see this child, we just hear them discussing it, and although this is the nominal reason for Oberon and Titania's disagreement, it does seem that mutual jealousy, appropriate in a play about all the vicissitudes of love, particularly involving Theseus and Hippolyta, seems to be the main problem between them.
Fairies, let's get out of here. I swear they never sleep with him or talk to him again.
Wait just a minute, you crazy hussy. Aren't you supposed to obey me, your lord and husband?
If you are my lord and husband, I must be your lady wife. So you're supposed to be faithful to me. But I know for a fact you're sent away from fairyland, disguised as a shepherd, and spent all day singing love poems and playing the straw pipes with your new girlfriend. The only reason you left India was to come see that butch Amazon Hippolyta. She was your boot-wearing mistress and your warrior lover. And now that she's getting married to Theseus, he's coming to celebrate their marriage.
How can you shamelessly stand there and talk about me and Hippolyta when you know that I know about your love for Theseus? Besides, wasn't it you who made him desert Peregrine at night, right after he raped her? And wasn't it you who made him desert all his other girlfriends, like Eagleus and Antiopa?
These are nothing but jealous lies. Since the beginning of Midsummer, my fairies and I haven't been able to meet anywhere to do our dances in the wind without being disturbed by you and your arguments. We haven't been able to meet in a hill or in a valley, in a forest or in a meadow, in a rushing fountain or a pebbly stream. And because you disturb us so that we can't dance for them, the winds have made fogs rise up out of the sea and fall down the rivers.
These actors show that sometimes a company thinks modernizing the language, throwing in simple contemporarily phrased sentences and even contractions, is the way to make an audience like Shakespeare. That's controversial. I am certainly not in favor of it, but presumably their audience could follow what was going on. And what was going on? Certainly these are strong words of jealousy. Titania talking about the bouncing Amazon, your buskined mistress and your warrior love. But what's really significant in the scene is Titania's very long monologue, roughly from lines 85 to 115. These are the forgeries of jealousy. Shakespeare describing the wickedness of jealousy not in the plot, as classically happens in the tragedy Othello, but in a sense that the fairy king and queen's relationship being in trouble has caused trouble all through nature. This is what results in Oberon's decision to punish Titania, rather strangely for a husband who is already jealous, by making her fall in love with the first thing she sees under the spell of the love potion. From that, appropriately enough, we turn to another lover's conflict with Demetrius and Helena. This is a scene that really shows that love is not love, to paraphrase one of Shakespeare's sonnets, when it appears in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Oberon, magically invisible, as we might expect a fairy to be able to do, listens to them, and Demetrius is saying, I don't love you, and how I cannot possibly love you. She says that I am like your dog. Line 204 and 205. The more you beat me, I will fawn on you. Use me but as your spaniel. 210. I want to be used as you use your dog. And he essentially says in the next line, it makes me sick to look at you. How can this be love? Love is based on warmth toward and loving actions toward other people. That's what God means, of course, telling us to love each other and telling us that he loves us. This is simply a physical infatuation, a passing interest that a real life together cannot possibly be based on, given the way Demetrius talks to Helena and the way she debases herself with the dog comparisons. And certainly people would be kinder to their dogs normally than she expects Demetrius to be to her.
Stay, though thou kill me, sweet Demetrius.
I charge thee, hands, and do not haunt me thus.
Oh, wilt thou darkling leave me? Do not so.
Stay, stay. On thy peril, I alone will go.
A sweet Athenian lady, line 260, is in love with a disdainful youth. Anoint his eyes, but do it when the next thing he espies, notice that we're rhyming again, may be the lady. Thou shalt know the man by the Athenian garments he hath on. As you've seen in a couple of the still photos I've shown, toga party dress, sheets over the people. This is obviously what Shakespeare is thinking when he has Oberon recognize Demetrius as an Athenian youth by the clothes he has on. Well, what other young man wandering in the woods is going to be dressed the same way? We can almost see already what further complication is going to take place here. After Titania and her fairies sing their little, very nursery rhyme-like song at the beginning of Act 1, Scene 2, Lola, Lola, lullaby, Lola, Lola, lullaby, the natural world of the fairies very much shown by the animals that are referred to in those early lines of Act 2, Scene 2, hedgehogs, Philomel, which in classical mythology is the nightingale, weaving spiders, etc., and Titania falls asleep. There's a lot of falling asleep in Act 2. In fact, characters seem to fall asleep for no particular reason, much more than you or I would. They'll suddenly sink down upon the ground tired, they're out. Watch for when they start waking up in Act 4. Remember the classic rising action, climax, or turning point, falling action of a play. You'll see it in Act 2 and Act 4, the rising action and the falling action, actually in terms of going to sleep and waking up, which fits the entry into and the exit from a dream world that we see here. Lysander and Hermia follow Demetrius and Helena into the wood and into the world where they're going to be out of control of things and of themselves. This is around lines 45 and 50 of Act 2, Scene 2. Oberon has just put the love potion on Titania, and now Hermia shows herself to be a moral girl. Despite her desire to marry Lysander, he gives these very tempting words, poetically phrased, around line 45. One turf shall serve as pillow for us both, one heart, one bed, two bosoms, and one troth. She says, don't lie so near me. We're not married yet. Lie over there. This is ironic because her having the right attitude about this leads Puck to think, when he enters about 30 lines later, that Lysander must be the person that Oberon felt was rejecting her because he's lying so far away from her. So he puts the juice of the flower on Lysander's eyes.
Lysander, if you live, good sir, awake.
And run through fire I will for thy sweet sake. Transparent Helena, nature shows art that through thy bosom makes me see thy heart. Where is Demetrius? How fit a word is that bound in to perish in my sword?
Do not say so, Lysander, say not so. What though he love your Hermia, lord? What though? Yet Hermia still loves you, then be content.
Content with Hermia? No, I do repent the tedious minutes with her I have spent. Not Hermia, but Helena I love. For who would change a raven for a dove? The will of man is by his reason swayed, and reason says that you are the worthier maid.
But Helena doesn't really believe it. She says, "You do me wrong. Why should I be mocked and scorned like this?" As they go off, Lysander pursuing Helena, we have a very interesting piece of symbolism to conclude Act 2. Hermia, of course, was asleep. She wakes up from a bad dream. Line 151, "Help me, Lysander, help me. Do thy best to pluck this crawling serpent from my breast." She dreamed that a serpent was eating out her heart. Serpent, of course, going back naturally to the book of Genesis, symbol of evil, a true embodiment of evil. One of the things that I think proves the story of Adam and Eve true is how much mankind still hates snakes. A great symbol of love being taken away, of the harm that's being done Hermia, which unfortunately for Hermia is going to get worse and worse as the play goes on and as we move on into Act 3.